There and a very warm welcome to our special broadcast from Goa, where we are standing outside the venue of the SCO Foreign Ministers meeting that is going to take place on the 5th of May here in Goa. But ahead of that, there is big news that is coming in from Moscow. Kremlin claims that there was an assassination bid on President Vladimir Putin, that 2 drones were fired from the Ukrainian side. Though Ukraine has in fact said that they are not aware of any such drone strike. The alleged drone strike in Russia that comes as Moscow launched a new wave of attacks across Ukraine on Wednesday, including Kiev. No casualties have been reported in the drone strike that Russia is claiming was meant to assassinate President Vladimir Putin. He was not in office at that moment and is safe, is what is being reported from Moscow. Russian state media said that a drone strike did cause a large fire at an oil storage factory in southwestern Russia near a bridge which was annexed to Crimea. This was another drone strike that Russia in fact has pointed out, which has caused a huge fire. Meanwhile, President Zelensky of Ukraine is at the moment in Finland. And remember, Finland has become the 31st country to have joined the NATO. NATO and its movement eastwards was one of the reasons that was cited by Russia for the invasion of Ukraine, saying that NATO is moving eastwards and it is causing a security threat to Russia. With Finland having joined NATO as well, the border of NATO with Russia has increased manifold, and now President Zelensky is in Finland. He is meeting with his Finnish as well as other Nordic counterparts. Finland shares its border with Russia and became a NATO member as well. But the big claim here by Kremlin that there was an assassination bid on President Vladimir Putin, will it end up escalating this war that we are seeing? And what repercussions could it have for the world and for India as well? That is not just the chair of the SCO, but also the president of the G20 this year. Does India have its task cut out as far as reaching a consensus is concerned? And what are we expecting as far as the bilateral conversation is concerned between S. Jaishankar, India's External Affairs Minister, and Sergei Lavrov, the Russian Foreign Minister, who will be landing in Goa for the SCO Foreign Ministers meeting tomorrow. Joining me now is Andrew K.P. Leung, independent China strategist, and Aina Tangent. He's a senior fellow at the Thai Institute and chairman Asia Narratives channel based in Beijing. We also have with us India's former diplomat and ambassador Rajiv Dogra. All of them are here with us on the show. First, let me go across to Rajiv Dogra. Sir, how do you assess the situation as we are seeing the developments in Moscow with Kremlin claiming that this was an assassination bid on President Vladimir Putin?
Well, there are 2 things. One, of course, the Ukrainian claim that they were not responsible for it, implying thereby that this is a false flag operation by Russia itself. Second is the response, or rather the first input coming in from Russia, that Kremlin has been attacked, and not just Kremlin, but President Putin was the target of this attack. Now, that is very serious, because the highest symbol of any country is the seat of its highest power, in this case, the president's palace. And the dome happens to be the place under which the president's office is located. So, no false flag operation would take such a risk as to do something against its own leader by its own rocket or missile or drone. So I would discount that. Now, the important thing is, where does it lead us to? I feel a couple of things would follow. One is the international reaction to it. And one of the first reactions to come out would be a collective reaction, would be in the SCO meeting. In G20 meetings, the Western attempts to have a resolution favoring them, or part of the resolution favoring them, was blocked by Russia and China, as you say. But here, the Western bloc is not represented. So let us see over the next 2 days how a statement or declaration comes out of the SCO meeting on this issue. The second is, how would Russia react to it? I feel that so far Mr. Putin's reactions have been very calm, calculated, and restrained. In fact, behind the scenes, they have been telling the NATO countries, especially USA, that Ukraine should be advised not to cross the red lines. Ukraine has already crossed the red lines a couple of times by striking deep within Russia, but this is the reddest of the red lines. So a reaction would come in. Whether it leads to escalation or not remains to be seen. But Zelensky is the type of person who thinks that escalation goes in his favor. So we are on a dangerous edge.
And certainly at this juncture, as you are rightly mentioning, the first major reaction that we will see from the global community will be here in Goa, as the SCO countries are going to meet, the foreign ministers are going to meet. They will most of the delegations will land here in Goa tomorrow. The meeting itself is on the 5th of May, but several bilateral meetings will take place tomorrow, including the one with Russia and China that External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will hold. Andrew Leung, how do you see the bilateral meetings now going between India and China and India and Russia, especially in the backdrop of this, what one may perceive as escalation in the Ukraine war, because China has firmly sided with Russia on the G20 platform?
Well, to be fair, China has not supported the war in Ukraine. It is just that China is adopting a more balanced view of what has caused the Ukrainian war. China has never supplied any weapons to Russia. And of course, China supports the UN Charter of National Sovereignty. But on the other hand, China and Russia's relationship dates back well before the war on Ukraine, and is taking a more realistic and careful view of what has caused the war. Now, what is more important, of course, is apart from this reported to be assassination attempt on President Putin, in my view, there's nothing new, because his life is on the line many times before. And when I was on the international conference in Turkey, or on Tangier in Africa a couple of months ago, my U.S. counterpart was even saying that they were contemplating doing away with Putin, and until I warned them, I mean, what is going to succeed Putin could be even worse. So I don't think that this is an attempt on Putin's life is anything new. But what is more important is the SCO, as to what's happening there. I think it's a game changer for the world. As you can see, there are 20 more countries, 20 more countries wanting to join the SCO. Why? I mean, that includes Turkey, Mexico, Indonesia, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, practically all continents. Because the world is changing. It's no longer dictated entirely by the United States hegemony. Because what is seen is that the United States is trying to impose its own model of governance to other people without realizing its own so-called democracy is broken, with broken infrastructure, as a kind of internal turmoil. How should China, according to the Harvard Kennedy School and the Edelman Trust, the government is most supported by these people. And according to the Ipsos IPSOS research center based in Paris, the Chinese people is regarded as one of the happiest in the world. Why should China learn from the United States? So I think that there is a kind of false rhetoric. And what's happening with this Shanghai Cooperation Organization is that many developing world countries are taking the same view that they should seize their own development without following either United States or China or Russia. But I think every country is should be respected, and that's part of the UN Charter. And that's the meeting in SCO, and the fact that 20 more countries wanting to join is in fact a signal that the tide is turning. The tide is turning away from wars a lot of pointless wars, disastrous wars in the Middle East and elsewhere, and focusing on development, peace and development.
All right. But as of now, the signs don't look very good, because if you go by what the Russian Foreign Ministry has in fact put out in its statement with regards to the alleged assassination bid against President Vladimir Putin, they are saying last night the Kiev regime attempted a drone strike against the residence of the President of the Russian Federation at Kremlin. They are also saying Russia reserves the right to take countermeasures whenever and wherever it deems appropriate. Ayana Tangent, I want to bring you in here. Do you see this as ominous signs of an possible escalation? And where do you see China stand now, considering that President Xi Jinping had in fact had a long and what was described meaningful call by President Zelensky only lately?
Well, obviously, he won't be very happy. He was hoping towards peace, and this seems to be an escalation. You know, we don't know what's precisely behind this, but we can look at what the outcomes are. For Zelensky, it's quite possible that he is in a desperate situation, and he's decided that escalation, as my colleague said, is in his favor. But you could also have it on the other way around, where Putin, with support for the war, flagging an attempt on his life, is going to galvanize the people and make it a lot easier to get recruits. So both sides have something in this game. Unfortunately, it just means that there's going to be more war, and it's senseless. There's going to be no way either side can maintain a victory. Russia cannot take over all of Ukraine and hold it against a population that's hostile to it, and vice versa. If Ukraine were to take back the Donbass region and Crimea, it would be a nightmare. They would be up against an entrenched group of people who dislike them and think that they have been invaded and taken over.
But is India's task cut out, considering that India is the chair for SCO and will be holding the SCO foreign ministers meeting on the 5th of May, which is day after tomorrow. Tomorrow there is going to be a gala dinner where all the delegations will be present. Before that, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is expected to hold some bilateral meetings as well. We're hearing that the meeting with the Chinese side is going to take place tomorrow. With the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, the meeting will become even more significant considering the latest developments. But as far as the SCO itself is concerned, in this current situation where the Ukraine war continues, moreover, at a time when India, in a year rather, when India also holds the G20 presidency and wants to have a success of both of them, what is India going to do? Is its task cut out? Is it going to be difficult for India? Let me go back to Rajiv Dogra for a bit on this. Rajiv Dogra, what do you see now forthcoming for India over here, both in the SCO foreign ministers meeting? What kind of voices are we likely to hear, especially in the backdrop of the Ukraine war, and also in the run-up to G20 now? How critical is it for India to engage on the one hand with all these countries which appear to be anti-West and successfully engage with the Western countries as well?
Well, exactly. I think you put the balance correctly, that even as negotiations for a draft statement go on in SCO, India would have its eye also on the fact that it is also the G20 president. So that meeting is going to take place shortly thereafter, once the SCO summit is over. So whatever happens day after tomorrow in terms of a statement coming out will have its impact also on the G20 deliberations. So it's going to be a slightly delicate act. The second thing is that whether we like it or not, whether the world likes it or not, whether the two warring parties wish it or not, the fact is that escalation is bound to happen. Zelensky is itching to escalate because he has been talking of spring offensive for a long time, and that is anticipated in the next few days. So whatever happens, situation will turn more and more complex because the Western world, especially America, has not given diplomacy a chance. So hopefully, if escalation takes place, diplomacy may be given a chance. And hopefully that is the kind of appeal that should come out of SCO, that there is still time. Avoid more war, avoid more casualties, avoid more tragedy in Ukraine itself. So I think the emphasis that should and perhaps could come out of the SCO deliberations is that we are now at a very critical juncture, much more critical than has been the case in the past 1 year, which was bad enough. So there is a responsibility on SCO to come out with a statement that shakes up the world and yet tells them that there is still time.
Absolutely. And there will be many other interesting aspects in the SCO foreign ministers meeting apart from the discussion that we'll see among the foreign ministers of the 8 nations. We'll also be seeing bilateral meetings. Will there be discussion on the border issue between India and China? What is External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar likely to communicate to his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang? And as sources are pointing out, there is not going to be a structured bilateral meeting with Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, but Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is turning up in India, in Goa, the first time since 2016, since Sartaj Aziz came as the Pakistani Prime Minister's advisor. This is the first visit of a minister that's happening. What is on his mind as well? We'll deliberate on all that after a very quick break. We'll also be joined by Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain on the SCO meeting and more. And our other 3 guests, Rajiv Dogra, Aina Tangent and Andrew K.P. Leung, will stay on with us. Welcome back to our special broadcast from Goa. We are outside the venue of the SCO Foreign Ministers meeting, which will take place on the 5th of May. But tomorrow is when several bilateral meetings will take place between External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. The likely bilateral will be with the Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang. We are also expecting a bilateral meeting with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian Foreign Minister. But sources have already pointed out that there is unlikely to be a structured bilateral meeting with the Pakistani counterpart Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. Let me go across to Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain. Sir, Bilawal Bhutto, it appears, is coming with an intention to rake up certain issues, at least from the sense that we get is the issue of Kashmir will be one that he would certainly want to rake up, because he's coming with a delegation and a large media contingent as well. How do you see this visit coming almost 7 years after the last visit by a Pakistani side when Sartaj Aziz had come to India for the Heart of Asia summit? And India has clearly over the last few years said that terror and talks will not go together.
Thank you, Mahav. Thank you for having me on your show. As to your question, yes, absolutely. This is a meeting, a conference at a particularly very important time. Since September last year, lots of things have changed. The international order seems to be moving on, but there is no certainty in which direction the whole thing is moving. In these uncertain times, post-pandemic, when the energy scene, the economic scene of the world is in disarray, and Pakistan in particular is in political and economic turbulence, I think it's important that Pakistan decided to attend this meeting. One expected it, that they would attend this meeting, because otherwise Pakistan would start tending to lose relevance, and it needed to be in such forums and multilateral kind of settings to establish its credentials, tell the world that it is very much there, and that it will attempt to bounce back. I'm not certain with what agenda Mr. Bhutto is coming here. But obviously with what has preceded, the Poonch terror attack, which obviously was the handiwork of the deep state of Pakistan, I can't be certain that Mr. Bhutto is going to rake up the issue of Kashmir immediately. It would be inadvisable to do it, because frankly saying, no one wants to listen to that. There are far more important things to talk about. This is irrelevant as far as SCO is concerned, and I think all the major players have said it very clearly that this is a bilateral issue and it should be resolved bilaterally. But Mr. Bhutto, knowing his past, knowing the fact that he has been quite indiscreet in his comments about our Prime Minister in the recent past, obviously he is going to choose to try and establish his credentials here, his very patriotic, nationalistic kind of credentials, prove that he is stronger than Imran Khan even. His party is stronger, more stridently anti-Indian than anyone else. That's the flavor of the scene at the moment in Pakistan. So you're absolutely right. It can happen that on the sidelines, perhaps, the option could be, it could be in the main conference setting where he makes a statement, or it could be on the sidelines with the media, that on Indian soil, he attempts to make a statement which tries to draw the attention of the world back towards Jammu and Kashmir. That will be unfortunate. It will be unfortunate. I don't think he will show himself in very mature light, nor his country. It would be better to look at how internal restructuring in Pakistan, how the economic turbulence in Pakistan can be overcome, what assistance can SCO give Pakistan, and particularly the last issue on this, there is already a scenario of a spiral of global terror once again emerging from that region, the AFPAC region. We are seeing the spate of attacks which are taking place within Pakistan. And as Pakistan moves towards elections, this probably will continue increasing. The scenario has changed in Afghanistan, Pakistan, with the Taliban now no longer under the control of Pakistan. So it would be more advisable for Pakistan to be looking at that kind of an environment rather than looking at its eastern border, which at the moment is reasonably stable.
All right, Andrew, in the SCO Defence Ministers meeting, we saw India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh make very sharp comments about terror and how it can destabilize the region and how terror continues to emanate from certain countries. There's radicalization, which is very dangerous, not just for other countries, but that country itself, which harbors these terrorists. Do you believe that that's a similar message might be sent out from the foreign minister's platform as well?
Well, the defense ministers' meeting was a very, very important meeting in which, besides the LAC aspect, it is this particular aspect of terror which emerged as important messaging which was sent out. There's no doubt Mr. Rajnath was not mincing his words when he was talking about the potential of what radicalization can result in, how it affects a nation, how it affects its internal functioning. And you have the prime example of that sponsored radicalization, the use of ideology as a weapon system, which is live in Pakistan. And we know very well that it has come to a sorry pass because of what has been happening there. I'm not sure this in this meeting. Of course, terrorism is very much a very important common factor for all the SCO countries. After all, if you really look at the geographical layout of SCO, you have the Central Asian countries, you're looking at Pakistan, India, China, and Russia in the north. And of course, then Iran and Turkey, etc., joining in as observer countries. All this area is in the throes of being potentially a hunting ground for terrorists. And at the core center of it is the AFPAC region. So obviously everyone is going to be concerned about it, and I'm sure our foreign minister will probably bring up the subject in some way or the other.
All right. Let me bring in our other two guests, Andrew Leung and Ainar Tandon. I'll give you both 1 minute each because we've run out of time. Andrew, first to you. India is expected to once again communicate the message to the Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang that the relationship between the two sides is unlikely to improve overall if the border friction remains. What kind of response shall we expect from the Chinese side?
I think that there's a reality that both sides are not going to give in on their own territorial claims. But what is more important is to look forward rather than backward. I think that China always takes the view that the border dispute does not define the entire relationship between China and India. Both are great countries. Both have a lot of things in common. And in fact, it is the focus of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to how to deal with a changed world order, where the developing world is gaining more say, and what kind of role in both India and China could play in this new scenario.
All right. Einar, this will be the second meeting between S. Jaishankar and Qin Gang as his counterpart. How do you read the first meeting that took place in March, and what are the expectations from this meeting?
Well, I don't think there are many expectations. As was pointed out, India wants to define the relationship in terms of this issue. China wants to say, look, we can't agree, so let's put this issue aside. You have fundamental different approaches. But, you know, India has to be a little bit careful. You can't say that Pakistan shouldn't be bringing its bilateral issues to the SCO when India is, in fact, bringing its bilateral issues to the SCO. I would prefer both of them would refrain from that. The SCO should be about the charter of the SCO, dealing with terrorism and external threats coming into countries and things like that. Obviously, there are claims on many sides about the terrorism, but it has to be talked out, not sensationalized. Otherwise, there'll be no progress.
All right. Okay, but let me quickly point out that India hasn't taken these bilateral issues on the SCO platform, but would rather be discussing them separately on the sidelines in bilateral meetings with the counterparts. We'll have to leave it at that. Many thanks to all of our panelists for joining us here on this discussion. We're taking a very quick break now.